Hello, good evening, guys. Come on in, come on in. We're going to have a special show tonight. I've got Deb Philman in the house. Hello, Deb. Are you ready for tonight?
Hello. I'm so ready.
Okay.
If it involves Catherine Truitt, I'm so ready.
Okay, all right. So we're going to, so we're teed up and ready to go. So we're going to talk about North Carolina becoming probably the first state in the union to be pushing critical race theory, not only on pre-K students, on special need pre-K students. And we're going to support this with total evidence. You're going to hear that this is not true because people, it will be in their best interest to lie their asses off. But I'm going to show you how this is true. So let me just fast forward to today. Today, the state school board in North Carolina voted 7-4 to continue a partnership for 4 years with UNC's. It's called the, why can I not think of this? Oh my gosh, to partner with UNC for an early childhood critical race theory program. And so the vote was 7-4, but when we back up and go to Thursday of last week, Nancy emailed Catherine Truitt and said, hey, babe, got a problem. You got this contract coming up. Your name is going to have to be signed on to that, State Superintendent Catherine Truitt. Your name is going to be signed on this. You're executing the contract. What are you going to do? Here's evidence of what's going on. Didn't hear anything. Monday morning, Nancy emails back and says, listen, I'm not playing with you. This is a problem. We cannot have critical race theory inside of our schools for pre-K. Finally, Monday morning, Deb, we do get an email back from Truitt because, guys, and Deb, I don't know if I told you this or shared this with you. Of course, Deb does the Reason We Learn podcast and blogs, etc. I think you've written about this, but this took $7 million out of federal funding for pre-K students that had special needs. We're talking about autism, blindness, deafness, traumatic brain injury. It took it from there and gave it to UNC's Frank Porter Graham to teach the sickest, nastiest, most hateful racism you've ever seen in your life. So let's go back and let me tell you what happened. We show Catherine Truitt the evidence. We said, look, here are the slides. This is communism. This is the worst of the worst stuff, and we can't have it in our schools. So here is Catherine Truitt's email back to us. In my opinion, okay, it's a big leap from equity and cultural responsiveness to communism and CRT, and there's no proof that this content is going to be led into either of those things.
Yeah, the contract. She's talking about the contract.
She's talking about the contract. She's talking about, guys, a contract for training, and we're going to show you that training. In my experience, whether or not it's equity initiative and culturally responsive teaching, by the way, that's always critical race theory. It never isn't.
They have the same initials.
Same initials, same everything. She's like, nothing to see here, okay? And I think she will, Deb, I think she'll regret sending this email. Something tells me about that, right? And so we're going to show you, what's going on here and kind of everything back to back. But what happened yesterday is when given the chance to speak up and say something, the executor of the contract, and that would be Superintendent Catherine Truitt, whitewashed the nature of this training. She was completely silent, and it was left to school board member Amy White to say, what the hell is this doing in our classes? Why are we signing this contract? Catherine Truitt remained silent and tried to play it off like it was no big deal.
Did you get the impression she had not even looked at the lesson plans?
When she sent that, let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say no. But why the hell not? And why wouldn't you look at it?
That's my question.
Yeah. So we want to know, gosh, why wouldn't you, look at something of that nature, right? Before you go and say nothing to see here. All right. So let's take a look at the contract right now, just so we can kind of all get on the same page about what we were signing. And again, this is $7 million.
Federal funds. It should be noted. Federal funds.
That's right.
But that, to me, that's just as bad, if not worse, because, she's these are funds for special needs. When it's coming from the federal government, it is for a very specific purpose. And when we look at the lesson plans, I think people will see that you're going to be hard pressed to connect the dots between helping special needs kids succeed and this content. So to me, it's misappropriation of funds as well.
Right. It absolutely is. I mean, this is earmarked especially for special needs. And as everyone knows here, it's very, very costly to provide education. It's really cost prohibitive to provide education for these children. You almost need to depend on the state for that.
We definitely can't afford to waste money on things that do not address their specific needs and helping them succeed with the skills they need to learn, right? We can't fill fluff. We can't do fluff, and we can't do social justice with their time.
Yes, absolutely. So here we have this, and you'll see that this is a contract that was to be executed for a partnership. So what this is partnership with UNC Chapel Hill, Frank Porter Graham, and the DPI. It's a continuing contract. So I want you guys to see this because look, the purpose of this is for Frank Porter Graham to effectively run all the pre-K teaching of teachers all across the state.
Right.
And that's a problem. Because if you live in Johnston County and you don't prefer your special needs child to be racially abused, tough noogies. Right. Because that's not going to be up to you. That's up to the state.
Right.
Right.
Well, this is really important for people to understand because almost all the preschools in North Carolina are private in the sense that people are paying to send their kids to these, daycares and preschools. Okay. We don't really have like state-run preschools yet. They're probably working on that too. But in order to teach in them and have them be appropriately accredited and certified and all that kind of stuff, the teachers have to be certified in the state of North Carolina. Now, it does not matter if you were certified in another state or you can, you're going to need to have that certification or come up to speed with it. So you might bring another state certification and you're going to say, what am I missing? If this is a new requirement, they're going to say, well, you got to go get this new training that is in place, and then you'll be provisional until you get this new training. So if you want to teach in preschool in the state of North Carolina, you're going to have to now go through this program. It's not going to be optional. Okay. They've done this many times in North Carolina. Happened to me once. We not with preschool, but with regular K-12. So even if you think, well, my kid's okay because I'm not going to have to be subject to this because my kid goes to, such and such Christian preschool or whatever. No, if those are certified preschool teachers, they're going to go through this program. Even if they've already been teaching in the school, they'll be sent back to get it. So that's the first thing that's really, really important. And the second thing, of course, is for special needs kids. They're going to be scattered throughout the public schools. So that's a secondary issue. But I think I just want to make sure people don't think like, oh, well, my kid doesn't go to a public preschool. It's going to be fine.
That's just it. I mean, there was a few weeks ago at the state school board meeting, a representative from Frank Porter Graham couldn't have been any more radical that said, look, we want to mandate these trainings as a stipulation for licensure. And so let's look at what this training involves. So this training, again, is critical race theory, probably one of the clearest cut examples I've seen, Deb.
Do you feel like we need to just be for the audience to explain what we mean when we say critical race theory, because it's a term that gets used a lot, and people who would want to challenge us are going to say, or Catherine Sherwood has said, that's not critical race theory. So I think it's really important for us to explain in layman's terms what we mean when we say that, or at least I can explain what I mean by that. And that is that critical race theory is a theory of race in America, specifically in America. Okay. It's a theory of race. Like what does race mean in America? Think of it that way. It comes from critical pedagogy or critical theory in general, which is postmodernist. And there are critical pedagogies, which means this is how you would teach it. This is the lens through which you would look. If you were a teacher, you would apply your theory of race to interacting with your students and to planning your lessons and all that. Now, the theory of race that is critical race theory, critical doesn't mean like, oh, I'm, using critical thinking. Okay. What it means is that racism is inherent in every interaction we have, all the way down to apparently toddlerhood, birth, whatever, that racism is endemic to the United States, but moreover, not just the United States, to something they call whiteness. which is
And
just
this
a
is an
stand-in for
example.
white people, by the way. So critical race theory can thus be interpreted to be a theory of race in America that centers racism in whiteness and says that the country is inherently racist because of white people.
Correct.
There you have it.
And the esprit de corps, or the place setting for every single preschool, to your point, whether they be private or whatever, will be based in this. Why? Because they, meaning the DPI, wants a standard of instruction, not only K through 12. Now they want pre-K. So in other words, this is the master plan. Is this what we're looking at, Deb? This is standardized.
Right. And what people need to understand is that you can have your theory of racism in America, and no one is saying don't have your little theory. Okay. If that's what you believe, if you really think the United States is inherently racist and that all our interactions are inherently racist, that's your opinion. What's happening in our public schools using our public tax dollars, both federal and state, is that opinion is being pushed as fact. It's not a question of this is one option or this is one way to look at it or one person's opinion. This, by standardizing it, is they're standardizing this as the official state faith. The official state religion of race is critical race theory. And I say religion most intentionally because it is faith-based in the sense that there is no data whatsoever that proves that these interactions, whether they're positive, negative, or otherwise, are grounded in racism. You cannot prove that. Therefore, it is faith-based. Therefore, the state is pushing a state-sanctioned belief system onto all of us, but most especially the youngest amongst us who cannot argue.
And
they can't fight back.
The least among us. I mean, can you imagine having a blind child or a deaf child or autistic child of any color being exposed to this evil? And it is nothing short of evil, because I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it. The good news, Deb, is when we're talking about where we're trying to define critical race theory, you're going to see definitively what the tenets entail. That's the great news about tonight, is that if there is any good news about tonight, we're going to get up close and personal, because if you want a model lens for what this looks like, you're going to find it. You're going to find it here. Let's see. Let me pull this up. All right, next. Okay. So, and again, this is questioning norms based in whiteness. So this is pre-K students and pre-K all across the state. And this, by the way, would be non-special needs as well, because special needs children try to mix in the same population. You're going to teach all children who are 3 and 4 years old to build their racial identity and to question norms based in whiteness.
A child of 3, a child of 10 doesn't really understand what a norm is. Never mind, is there an objective definition of whiteness? But I want to really I'm a words person, and I want people to look at words like clarifying conversations. It's the kind of term you just blow right by it, and you're like, oh, clarifying conversation, what does that mean? Okay, clarifying means that the adult is going to clarify things for the child. So if a child has a viewpoint about race or their racial identity or somebody else's racial identity, the teacher will come in and clarify, correct them. Is it the job of a teacher to correct a 3-year-old's or a special needs child view of their own racial identity? What that could look like, as an example, is a white child who says, I don't hate anybody and I'm not racist and I don't have these feelings. And a 3, I don't even know how they would manifest. I don't know how they'd even say that. They're 3. But imagine a teacher having a clarifying conversation that, well, you didn't mean to be born white and it wasn't your idea. There's even a book by that title, right? Not My Idea, about how terrible whiteness is. But you have this responsibility and you have to do this and you have to do that. It's talked about almost like we're original sin. Like you didn't choose it, but you have it. And then imagine you're a black child and it's, well, you're oppressed by the whiteness in this world, but et cetera, et cetera. Clarifying conversations, just a fancy way of saying, we're going to make sure that if you start to step outside the lines in terms of color blindness or something like that, we're going to clarify for you that having a positive racial identity means having a racial identity. Whereas Martin Luther King would have taught us, don't have a racial identity.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a racial identity. Do you have a racial identity, Sloan?
Not that I'm aware of.
Me either. I was taught growing up that was actually kind of a bad thing, that I was not really supposed to have a racial identity, never mind positive, negative, or otherwise, right? I shouldn't have one. I don't walk around as a white person. Like, that's not really something I should strive for.
Well, moreover, we were always taught not to single out people of different colors. Do you remember that? That's yes. That went by the way of the Whigs. So let's just remember what we have here. So that you just pointed out that this is about control, because the next slide I'm going to put up, and this just shows you how contradictorily ludicrous this is. Check this out. This is straight up nuts. This is talking about discipline, and I want y'all to understand it's talking about changing the discipline standards across the board in preschool. Remember, this project, this partnership seeks to standardize this type of education all across the state. So this says, so what you're looking at is this: general supervision of children. General supervision. Okay, so the old standards you'll see in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. The new standards are on the right. Understand that control is based in white norms and associated with white supremacist thought. And it is appropriate to focus on social emotional teaching and learning.
Well, notice the word understanding. That's just a condescending way of saying, this is the fact we want you to accept. This is the premise we want you to accept. So don't bother arguing with us. You need to understand that. So if you're the teacher, the teacher in this training, and you're listening, you want to say, I question the premise. Control is not based in white norms, first of all. And since when do we use control to discipline these kids? Or since when is discipline based in control? So I disagree with this entire premise. I certainly disagree that I have to understand it's based in white norms, whatever those are. And now it's appropriate to focus on the social, emotional, teaching and learning. First of all, define that, please. Second of all, since when wasn't it appropriate to focus our discipline on other more, as it says in the first original, non-punitive and control exercised in a reasonable way? Control simply means you controlling the classroom, or controlling like the norms and the expectations of the classroom. It's not literally physically I'm putting you in bondage. I've never seen a preschool teacher be like,
but that's true. But the clarifying conversations seek to control. But if control is white supremacy, why would you want to do that? It strikes me that they should be canceled out. Now, wait for a belly laugh here. This is hysterical. I just wanted to interject a little humor. Child-related display. All right. So this is when you read books, when you're decorating the classroom, all that. Now, this only applies to children of color. Make sure that nursery rhymes and charts, etc., do not show animals with human characteristics.
I want to meet the racist that wrote this. That's a racist that wrote that. If you look at an animal, if you look at an anthropomorphized animal and you see a black child, I'm thinking you're the racist. Oh, wow. I'm thinking you might be the racist.
And by the way, it makes a delineation. You center children of color, right? And my reading of this is to make sure that they are protected from seeing very hungry caterpillar. Let's see. Dr. Seuss, certainly. But any of the other, Noah's Ark, any of those things you may want to watch out. Make sure that this is straight up crazy. Make sure that people are not used as alphabet letters or objects. So no Thomas the Train. No any of that. No Alice in Wonderland.
So according to this, black children are as fragile as glass, have no sense of humor. And the people who write things and look at all this material are some of the most racist people I could ever imagine.
Well, hey, look, to your point, are we suggesting that objects with, Thomas the Train makes this author think about black children? That's an
they're talking about the Cat in the Hat. They're saying that the Cat in the Hat, because the Cat in the Hat is black, And Dr. Seuss once has a white face, but a black body, that Dr. Seuss once said that when he was drawing Cat in the Hat, he was inspired by the elevator lady or something in the building where he worked, not because she was black, but because she was mischievous and had a great smile. Okay. She did happen to be black, but that's not why. He just liked her personality. And that's what he was thinking of when he came up with the facial expressions and everything. So people connected those dots in a linear way and said, oh, she was a black elevator lady. He drew black and the Cat in the Hat is black. Therefore, Cat in the Hat is racist. Like, it's just, meanwhile, please represent black children in literature. So I'm really confused. So we should have more representation in the literature, but not as a cat. But if it's a white cat, like in the Aristocats, when there's a white cat, a Persian cat that's white, like, I mean, should white children be offended? I'm very confused.
I don't know. You're making my head blow off because
right?
Because when you try to rationalize the irrational,
no, you can't. That's why I'm doing it, so people hear how crazy this is.
Look, we are here because we have let lunatics run the asylum, which when I finish out tonight, Deb, and explain to you where this ended up today, which is infuriating, it is the failure of not only Catherine Truitt, but other elected officials to not push back on this nonsense. And here we are. So again, this is about building the racial identity of children. This seems to be the hallmark of this program. Now, Truitt and others will tell you, has nothing to do with us. This was before my time. That's true. This document was before her time, but this is the document upon which everything is based.
Well, okay? We just read her email.
Oh yeah. Well, she's changed her tune. So we've been all over the map. That's why things were crazy as hell when I opened up the show. Cause I was like this, that. I'm trying to keep up with all the stories. All right. So back to building the racial identity, encourage children to question. This is some straight up BS. Social, scientific, and historical facts. We want children to question whether or not information is true. Now, this frustrates completely the purpose of education. Education at this age particularly is the transference of knowledge. If you are telling 3-year-olds, especially with cognitive difficulties, to question scientific facts
as part of building racial identity,
then you're obviously teaching global warming, and I'm teasing.
I want a justification for how building racial identity in a preschooler or a special needs kid, because we're talking about both groups, how the children of those age groups and cognitive abilities and special needs should be encouraged to question social, scientific, and historical facts. In what context, with what background knowledge, with what vocabulary, with what critical thinking skills are they going to engage in these questions? See, this is cover for when the teacher goes into the school and says, now in the past, in history, it says X, but you should believe Y. That's what that's covered for. Encourage the children to question is really just the teacher's going to be questioning it and the children just listen.
Right. I know there are only 2 genders, mommy and daddy have told you, but that's not scientific. In fact, I know that you've heard scientists say that as well, but is it really true? Exactly. That is so that they can bend and mold your child. The government can bend and mold your child without your consent.
And when it comes to racial identity, they're going to be saying things like, now, you may have heard that America is a free place where everyone can be equal, but that's not true. That's a lie. And then they'll spout some 1619 garbage. Or you may have heard that Martin Luther King said X, but he also said Y, and they'll cherry pick some couple of things that he said that contradict the colorblind message or whatever. So this is a placeholder for coming in and taking the values that we've had and the norms that we've had that they're calling whiteness now, okay, that were based on Enlightenment, classical liberal values, and Correct. They're going to question that and throw it to the wayside and say, don't believe that anymore. That's what deconstructing is. That's what decentering and deconstructing is. It is out with the old and in with the new, and there is no floor. It keeps going till it's burnt.
Well, this is revolutionary. So you're looking at the Mal for Olds program, which sought to extinguish old culture, old habits, old traditions within every family. And so if you extinguish, right, this is cutting off the connection to the parents. Because if you're going to question all these things, who do you think you're going to question the most? It would be your parents. And again, children out there with cognitive difficulties, it's a lot of these children have a hard time bonding to begin with and trusting to begin with, right?
Yep.
So we're asking a lot of these children, this is complete nonsense. I don't know how in the world can someone possibly look at this and think that it's not communism and it's not critical race theory. Can you explain that to me, Deb?
Well, they're either willfully doing that or they're being very literal. In other words, they're saying, if I don't see the words critical race theory, then it's not there. If I don't see them mentioning, Delgado and Crenshaw and Bell, then it to the children, then it's not there. And what they forget is that when a teacher goes to a training or gets a certification or takes a class and they're taught all of this, you should do this. This is what you have to do. And they think their job is going to depend on it, or their supervisor's telling them, these are your lesson plans. This is what you have to do. That they're not teaching the kids what they taught you, but what you were taught is how to use those ideas to teach the children. You're teaching in critical race theory.
Why would the state be spending $7 million just for this? I mean, this is quite obviously a priority.
There's just so many premises, to center children of color in our classrooms. Well, then if you're
this
saying
is racism,
it is racism.
What you're looking at is this. I want you to understand that. Let me explain to you this slide. First of all, I did not write this slide. This is what I got off the website, by the way. Again, these materials have been taken down from the UNC Frank Porter Graham Center. They have been taken down because they're incendiary and downright illegal.
They were just there yesterday.
They were taken down right after the board meeting. So somebody somewhere told somebody to do something. So you've got down here the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Yes, it was done before Catherine Truitt's time. That's not the point. This is the partnership. This is the person that signed the new contract to continue on was Catherine Truitt today, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Look at this. This is saying that we want you to diminish, stereotype, scapegoat, collectively punish white-skinned people, and we want you to elevate. Right? We want you to elevate Black people. This is racism.
No one by race should be centered in the classroom. So you don't get to say like, well, white people shouldn't be the center of everything and then turn around and say, but Black people should. Okay. So you either want to decenter race from environments and you want to have race not be so important and you want to have the child's own individual characteristics that are their own, that they choose, not the immutable ones they didn't choose, that they were born with, be at the center of their learning. That would be a worthy goal. Okay. If first of all, you could quantify that something was called whiteness, and if you could quantify that it was in the center of everything, which they can't. So they're advancing a premise that currently whiteness is the center of everything, which they can't prove is even true. And now they're saying we're going to go out of our way in your face to center non-white children when we've just been going on and saying how that shouldn't be their way. So this is about supremacy, but not white supremacy.
Yeah.
This is, you don't divide children this way. This is absolutely bad for kids. It's bad definitely. For children.
And then we're going to end up, this is the last slide I'm going to show. We could go on and on and on and on. The point is that we reviewed webinars. I'm going to show you one of those. We reviewed collateral that was on the website. We reviewed foundational documents. We reviewed publications. We reviewed annual reports. We reviewed all this stuff. I mean, this is what Frank Porter Graham is. This is who they are. This is what we're contracting with. Incidentally, Catherine Truitt said, and you'll listen to it, that, well, we decided that we're going to sign it this one time, but next time we're going to let them contract with someone else. In other words, if you have the power to not contract with this BS now, and you're not using it, which she clearly admitted, why the hell are we dealing with this? Whiteness refers to the way that white people, their customs, culture, and beliefs operate as a standard by which other groups are compared. Because of her, in part, they're hammering this. This is what, the fourth or fifth slide from one presentation, by the way, that I've shown you with this stuff in there.
First of all, this is genocidal language. We need to be very clear about that. This is genocidal language. Replace the word whiteness with Jewishness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is exactly the same kind of verbiage that you use when you other people. It's genocidal. What whiteness is, refers to the way white people. What are white people? Phenotypically white people? Are we all the same? Everybody who has this color skin. I'm Jewish. You're Jewish, right?
Yes.
Okay. Are we not white anymore? Which are we? Which are we? What is our culture? This is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. And it's kind of like when people say blackness. Well, what kind of blackness? Are we talking about Caribbean, African? Which country in Africa? It's a big place. Okay. We're talking about South American. These are lots of different cultures. Is the culture the culture of the continent or the area they came from, the language their ancestors spoke, or is it the color of their skin that it resides in? So this is the way, they spoke in the Third Reich, that your culture resides in your phenotype, in the size of your head, in the size of your nose, in your lips, in your hair texture. This is absolutely regressive, backwards, anti-scientific nonsense, and it's 100% racist. And no child of any age should be taught about a concept called whiteness any more than they should be taught about blackness or whatever elseness.
Well, Christianness. I mean, look, we've got the Establishment Clause, and we know and understand and come to accept that not one dime can go to promoting any religion, Christianity, in the classroom. Can't bring a Bible, can't read a prayer, can't do any of that stuff. However, $7 million in this instance can go to providing money for absolute racial hatred of the worst kind.
At least religion, which by the way is protected under the Constitution just the same, is a choice, right? I mean, you are born under a faith with your parents, but you still choose whether you're going to follow that faith. You don't choose what color your skin is. You don't choose what you look like. These are immutable characteristics. Now, imagine you were the special needs child who probably didn't choose to be blind, didn't choose to be deaf, didn't choose to have whatever special needs they've got. And now, to cap it off, you're telling them that they who have extra needs that they have to hurdle over just to learn to read and write and do math and everything
They're
else.
still white supremacists.
But, and you're white. So, and you're black and you're oppressed by the little kid sitting next to you.
Right. You can't be friends with them because,
understand, they don't say to the kids, because people will come after us, Sloan, if we imply that they're saying you can't be friends with them. Of course they're not. They have a smile on their face. They're saying now we want you guys to love everybody and everything is great. But what you need in order for you to love each other properly, what you have to understand is that you're an oppressor. You come from the oppressive whiteness of whiteness, and you are oppressed because you're not white. And so what we have to do is we have to center you and decenter you, and you need to develop a more positive view of yourself. The kid's probably going I didn't think any bad. I'm 3, and then the other kid is and you need to understand that you have a responsibility to decenter whiteness and fight back against the white supremacy that's in your DNA. So, but love each other. Everything's awesome. Okay. So they're not going, don't be friends. They're just putting contradictory messages.
Okay. So
and now we listen to the voice and you'll hear it. It's not me making fun of them. They talk.
No, it's straight up. It's exactly what this is. Take a listen.
My name is Shauna LeGrand, and I am a regional consultant for the Northeastern LEAs. Thank you so much for making the choice to be here today. You have all made the choice to engage in a learning opportunity that will help you to reflect on what is needed to stop the perpetuation of systemic racism in early childhood education programs and provide an equitable and culturally continuous learning experience for all young children. Each one of us has an obligation to this work. And while we do not have all of the answers, we know that change begins with us in moving forward with building anti-bias and equitable early childhood education spaces.
Wait for it. Here it comes.
I'm Paula Grubbs. I'm a regional consultant for the North Central LEAs. I believe deeply that we must know ourselves and continue to examine our own socialization, values, beliefs, and our biases. Before we get started, I want to position myself as a white woman and acknowledge my own privilege and experiential lens or way of knowing the world is that of a white woman in the United States. I continue to examine my own internalized racism and socialization, and I embrace and I'm grateful for this journey of learning to be an anti-racist and reduce harm personally and professionally. And now we will continue our conversation. We realize and acknowledge that discussions about race and equity are difficult and they may be uncomfortable, but to get the most out of our conversation today, we all need to be fully engaged. So this will be scary. We'd like for you to have your cameras on. We will keep ours on. Again, a little bit scary. And in the breakout rooms and activities, please speak your truth, but definitely speak. And finally, we only have a short time together today.
Thank God for tender
we plan
mercies.
to provide an overview and then leave you with some concepts to think about, a little bit of work to do in the middle, but we aren't going to finish our conversation.
Okay. That was
Why do they call things that aren't conversations? Why do they do that? And there is no such thing as my truth and your truth. Whatever. There's either the truth and your subjective opinion. That's all there is. There is the truth that can be measured, can be known. It absolutely can be known. And then there is your opinion. So what they are talking about is their opinion. So her whole idea of like bias, by the way, internalized bias has been debunked time and time and time again.
she
You
admitted to
cannot
being a
measure
racist.
it.
Yeah, she just admitted to being a racist. Why the hell is she still being employed? And moreover, why is she going to be training preschool teachers across the state of North Carolina? Why?
You can convince a nice person that they are a problem pretty easily because they're a nice person, and they have to be pretty grounded in who they are and have a pretty strong spine to stand up to that and say in the time where they're allowed to actually converse. I disagree with all of this. I don't have internalized biases. I am very self-aware and I do think about my own thoughts quite a lot. I journal, I do a lot of things. And you know what? I walk into a classroom and I treat my students as little humans, and I take them as they are, and I let them tell me who they are. I don't get busy thinking about who they are from my perspective, because there would be projection and bias and racism and stereotyping. So instead, I just let them tell me who they are, who they think they are. And that's where I leave it. And I'm not going to do what you're asking me to do, because I actually think it does harm children to label them and classify them based on criteria they had no say in. So I'm not going to do it. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye. But you're not, most people don't have the guts to do that. So they go, okay, I'll do it.
Well, I mean, look at the people who opt into teaching. It's usually rule followers, right? It's people that have a calling to help children. They're just there to help. So, I think that's something else we need to look at. But let's go back. So here's where we are. We are all on the same page. Here's what we've been told. So last we left you in this process, we were telling you that, unfortunately, the vote happened today. We were told by Catherine Truitt last night that she was going to, she hinted that she would stand in the way of this vote. She wasn't even there that we saw today, didn't say a word, let the vote go through. Her statutory obligation is to advise and consent. She needs to advise the state school board. In other words, she could have said, this isn't the best program. We want to delay it. These aren't the needs of the children. This isn't good use of our money. This is this. She did not do that. She whitewashed the entire thing. And she even lied. She wanted everyone there, Deb, to believe that, no, this has nothing to do with the Department of Public Instruction. This is the Department of Health. And she was caught in a lie because Amy White, who was on the school board, said, yeah, but are you signing the contract? Yeah. Are you asking for money here? Yeah. Are you overseeing it? Yeah. That's the truth. Catherine Truitt could have used her role today to stand up for children and say, this isn't the right vendor. What she's doing instead is saying, everything that comes out of this, we're going to have a final say on. Well, we've seen this before. She did it with social studies. It has been an unmitigated disaster. She did it with a glossary, promising to take out white supremacy, privilege, a couple of other words. Damned if they weren't in there. Every single time she's made promises, they have not been kept. So no, just no. We should not be spending one red cent on promoting this type of racism. We know what it is. The second thing that she's been saying is, well, they're going to be different, or she's hinting at that. That is a total lie. What you have just seen, Deb, is what we're going to get. Now, what do we do, right? You and I have talked about this a lot, that it is a dumpster fire of epic proportions between the state school board, which is appointed, right, and the DPI, which is an elected position. Really, Catherine Truitt is not going to be anything but a rubber stamp for the progressives. She is not afraid of you, me, or the parents. She thinks she can lie her way out of everything. That's what we've seen. And she thinks she can ride it out. So we need the General Assembly to come in and do their job and take control. There is a committee called the Joint Oversight Committee of Education. I'm going to get some information out to you about that tomorrow, but we need to have a hearing and we need to have complete oversight on this. Catherine Truitt cannot be trusted to lead this department. This is too big of a job for her, Deb.
I truly believe that she's in over her head in a couple of respects. One, I don't think that she understands the pedagogy. I don't think she understands what critical theory is.
Totally
I don't think and I think rather than avail herself of the expertise of people who do know and say, come and educate me, teach me.
Right.
I mean, what Mark Robinson has been trying to learn all he can, and he's been on top of this. She's had plenty of time. And since this became a controversial hot button issue, to educate herself, to become aware of what these things are. And she seems almost willfully ignorant, like she would rather remain in a state of ignorance about it so she can continue to deny that it's there, along with all the Democrats, along with the media, along with everybody who wants to pretend, don't believe your lying eyes, like, look over there. And I think, like I said, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt that she's not malicious. She's just incompetent. And at this point, she's willfully incompetent because, as you pointed out, she doesn't need to be competent because the people of North Carolina are allowing it to happen. They're not pressuring her. The North Carolina Republicans are not pressuring her.
We are. Yeah.
You are. But the party in the state is not. Nobody is coming down on her and saying, honey, your career is over. Your career is over. If you do not represent the voters who elected you, you're not representing it's not just Republicans, it's the people of North Carolina. If you will not do your job and educate yourself about these issues that your constituents are upset about across the board, not just white people either. There are Black people, there are Hispanic people, there are Asian people, there are people of every conceivable walk of life in North Carolina that are very upset about this racial essentialism in the schools. It is hurting children right now as we speak. It's hurting relationships. It's increasing violence and fights in the schools.
Oh, yeah.
And classroom discipline is out the window. She does not understand what she's doing. And like I said, I think she's not going to. She is just not interested in doing her job the way it should be done. And that's the bottom line. And given who she's friends with and who's been helping her career all along, I'm not really surprised. But we, the people, need to get rid of her. Personally, I think she should resign.
I think
she should resign.
I've called for her resignation several times, and I'm going to disagree with you on this. I do think she's malicious, and here's why. In September, she made like a little pact behind the scenes that she was going to write with Roy Cooper, that she was going to write this awful letter about parents, insinuating that we are violent, we are setting a bad example for our children, and we're just generally a menace, and we need to knock it off. By the way, Deb, that was one day before the National School Board letter came out, one day before. And who did they cite on their Twitter feed? They cited Catherine Truitt.
All right. So, well, I take it back. Then what we have right now is we have somebody who actually isn't a Republican at all. And I mean, like, literally not one. She's just a plant. And
we don't take sides politically here.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that people are still thinking there's like a political solution
like a brand
to this,
name.
a brand name political solution to this. And there isn't. And so what I'm trying to explain to people is that, like, at this point, if you're putting your your eggs in the Republican basket to save our culture or save North Carolina or whatever. That's not going to happen, because here you have an elected official who has an R after her name, and she's, basically willing to hang the parents out to dry.
Absolutely. She's never apologized. By the way, she's never apologized. And as we've discussed also, she's got a press secretary, basically, who comes and covers for her and has written, I think, the third or fourth in a series recently, with the North State Journal, covering Catherine Truitt and talking about, gosh, jolly darn, I can't believe that the DOJ has said this awful thing about parents, and never acknowledges her own letter, never acknowledges that 5,000, a group of 5,000 groups put together have demanded that she retract the letter. Never acknowledges that. So you're right. You've got people on the same side of the aisle covering for her.
Well, and who voted for this? Who voted for this thing today?
Well, Catherine Truitt doesn't get a vote.
But who did vote?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was 4-7. But Catherine Truitt had the opportunity and the obligation statutorily to advise. She did not do that. And when given the opportunity to speak about this, actually, when put on the spot about this yesterday by Amy White, she completely whitewashed what we just saw. Totally whitewashed. And then she lied and said, hey, man, this is not my department. I mean, this is Department of Public Health and Human Services. And in fact, next time, we're just going to have them sign it. There ain't going to be a next time, because that's going to be in 4 years. And I can assure you, if we have anything to pray for, is that someone else will be at the helm at that time.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is parents of special needs kids, parents who have kids in preschools across the state, need to at least be aware. I would recommend you find other options if you possibly can, because you can't shield your kids from this. Like, if the teachers are going to learn this, and if they're going to go into the classroom and they're going to advance these theories on your kids will be harmed. This is not something neutral. They can't, it's, first of all, it's taking up time and space from things they do need to learn. So, like, let's just talk from practical terms. It takes
special needs
time.
Children. I mean, yeah.
Like, this is not that is not their priority. So whose priority is it? And what they're not explaining to anybody, parents, is they're not explaining the impetus for this. That why suddenly is everybody lighting their hair on fire that we have to inject race into every conversation? They'll cite George Floyd. There is no evidence. Let me repeat that. No evidence that killing was racially motivated. So to make that the poster situation for why the entire country needs to retool education down to 3 years old, centering race in every conversation. First of all, it's a lie. It's a lie of convenience, but it's a lie. This has been going on for decades. Second of all, it's not a data-driven reason. We don't change curriculum in public education without data-driven reasoning. You can't just, this is public funds. These are public. This is the public. This is your space that you pay for.
Schools. Yeah. And one of the other things that really makes me angry is, and Truitt's not alone in this, you're going to have people in Raleigh that say, listen, man, this really pissed me off. Catherine Truitt was telling parents, hey, go to your school board meeting, etc. Then she writes a letter like this.
Get involved, but don't get involved.
Get involved,
but be really nice and sweet about it, and don't complain.
Well, here's the deal. This stuff is being done at the state level. This is top-down stuff. This is the feds drilling down all the way into the classroom. And Catherine Truitt is not only a conduit for it, she's a willing participant. So what's going on is you're being lied to. I keep telling you this, Nancy. We all keep telling you this. This is happening from the top down. And you can plainly see that. This program, as we discussed, is going to go to all the preschools. So we need to focus, and we have been focused. We need your help to focus on the state level. This stuff is going on from the state level. It has to stop. It has to be eradicated from the state level. So what we're going to do, Deb, is we're going to ask everyone to absolutely demand with the Joint Oversight Committee on Education that there's a hearing on this oversight. What happens to that? It's a public hearing. Catherine Truitt will be drug in to testify about the nature of this program. Now, she's not going to be honest about it. She's going to say the same thing she said yesterday about it, that it's great, it's no problem, we're overlooking it. And by the way, it's not even my program. But at least the public will have a chance to see that and to ask her questions and put on the spot. the decision she made to not, be upfront about all this and to stand against this is you cannot be against critical race theory and stay silent at this. Can't do it.
But at the same time, I would like to call out to the people who would be on such a committee, all of you, if you're watching this, if you're listening, whatever, will you please, for the love of all that is holy, will you please get in touch with somebody like Sloan or me or James Lindsay or any number of a dozen other people I could put you in touch with and educate yourselves. Educate yourselves about what kind of questions you need to ask Catherine Truitt.
You can't be lied to.
You can't sit there and say, like, why did you put critical race theory? Because she'll go, there's no critical race theory. And then what are you going to say next? You can't just showboat this. You can't grandstand this away. It's not going to work. You need to go in knowing what you're talking about. And I'm getting so sick and tired of lawmakers who are like, oh, yeah, this is bad stuff. But then they're completely incompetent when it comes to actually grilling people. I mean, I would do a better job.
Let me tell you something. I have to drop a dime on Senator Mike Lee. He sits on the Senate Oversight Committee for Education. He told one of his constituents that he would not talk to us. Maybe he's afraid to talk to us. I don't know why, because we weren't his constituents. That is a lie. That is a dangerous lie. When you sit on that committee, you propose policies, rules, etc., that affect the rest of the state. So these people are very unwilling to talk to us. Some are, some aren't. I mean, we're not.
Why doesn't he just admit? Why doesn't he just admit that I only care about my voters, the people that can vote for me? I'm not there to represent the state constitution of North Carolina that I swore to uphold. I'm not there to represent the people of North Carolina that I swore to represent. Even though we move around a lot, sir, we move our homes, we run our businesses, we interact with your constituents. I mean, if that's going to be your attitude, that you're only going to do things for the people who directly vote for you, well, thank you for identifying yourself as a completely venal, corrupt individual. If that's where your caring begins and ends, I hope you get replaced. I will make it my business to support people who replace you.
I've emailed him a couple of times. No answer, no answer, no answer. With respect, out of 100 counties, we have just close to 80 centers of activism, 80 counties. We want to be at 100. In fact, I want to tell you guys, we're doing a 50 stop tour starting in February. It'll probably take us 2 months, but we are everywhere. But again,
they need to get educated, Sloan.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing.
When she's sitting there, they have to ask her questions like, can you provide us with the data showing the necessity of this to, as you put in your email, Secretary Truitt, where you said this is going to help these students, give the students what they need to succeed. Tell me how racial consciousness gives them what they need to succeed. What's the what in the sentence? What is it giving them? A positive racial identity. Okay, let's work with that. How does a positive racial identity help the blind child succeed in special need class? Go. Where's the data that shows that it does? Where's the data that shows they don't currently have a positive racial identity? And furthermore, show me the data that proves that this type of a program actually delivers a positive racial identity. You can't.
Well, that's why France has outlawed this. The UK has outlawed critical race theory because there is data actually, but it's not what they
harmful.
It's absolutely harmful. The violence has been epic, and they don't want. I mean, this is one American export they are not interested in. Is critical race theory, and so
does Catherine Truitt think that she can raise a generation of North Carolinians, little children, can grow up with racial essentialism from the time they're stop sucking their thumb all the way till they're 17, 18 years of age, and it's not going to arrive on her doorstep? That level of resentment and hate and anger. Does she honestly think she's going to be immune? Would she move into the Caymans when this is over?
She thinks that this is not going on in the schools. This is not the first time. She doesn't think it's in the schools, and she thinks that it depends on the person. If it depends on the person, then why the hell are you giving standardized lessons like this? If it depends on the person, then why are you training teachers?
It shouldn't depend on the person. You need to have a vetting program to make sure that you don't have psychopaths going into the classroom who are nothing but activists looking to manipulate and groom children into hating themselves, hating their parents, hating their country, hating their neighbor. Okay, that's not something you go, well, it depends on the person. I mean, it could happen. Do we background check people for being other kinds of psychopath? Why are we going out of our way to train people to think this way?
100%.
And then say, well, they'll probably not really do it, but we're going to spend $7 million on telling them they have to do it, but then they might not do it.
You see,
I mean, is she like mentally missing a few?
I really don't know. And, you know, two people that have, you know, gotten on us for criticizing Catherine Truitt, we focus on education. That's what we do. And we have to focus a lot on elected officials because that's, you know, they made campaign promises, right? On the right and the left.
They get on you for criticizing Catherine Truitt.
Well, let me explain to you, and I want to explain to the audience again why we do this. When you look at who's statutorily responsible for teacher training in the state, that would be Department of Public Instruction. It's in the name. So a lot of the things we've been talking about are standardized teaching of critical race theory of teachers done by the DPI. So that's a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. And so there's nowhere else to go but that. Now, we've also gotten on James Ford, who is a horrible racist. He is appointed, the state school board members that are appointed, we've gotten on them also. But the one who promised us, Deb, that she was going to look out for kids and do all this stuff, that's who it is. And so, and then folks say, you know, why aren't you focusing on local school boards? Because 75% of the stuff going on in North Carolina is relegated by the state, period.
Right.
People want you, but you know why people want us to not look at what's going on at the state? 56% of the state budget is education. I mean, major amounts of money. So do you think that damn near everybody has their hand in the cookie jar? Yes, we know that because we know Jamie Falkenberry, who's married to an education lobbyist, right? Without being really forthcoming about that, still has a role and is still benefiting, I believe, from his position as Catherine Truitt's right-hand man. This is corrupt.
Meanwhile, you'll be told every chance they get that our schools are underfunded.
Yeah.
That the reason that teachers want to go back to virtual is they're underfunded. They're not safe. We don't have proper ventilation. We don't have proper this. We don't have proper that. Meanwhile, what was it? $180 billion that the federal government set aside for COVID and all that kind of stuff. All they know how to do is either waste money or misappropriate funds and give it to their friends. So your kids are being used as pawns. It's absolutely corrupt. And, you know, if you're watching and you're sort of feeling like, well, what am I supposed to do about my child like today or tomorrow or whatever? Well, first, as Sloan said, you've got to get involved. You've got to get on the phone. You've got to make sure that this committee, you know, this oversight committee comes to be.
We need a hearing.
You need a hearing. And in the meantime, I would just make sure that you are on top of what they are actually teaching in the preschool or to your special needs kids. And you've got to just have eyes on. You've got to get in there and you've got to talk to those teachers face to face. Let them know, if you speak to my child about race, if you speak to my child about gender, if you do these things, you and I are going to have a problem. I don't know what I can do about it, but I'm going to just be over your shoulder. I'm going to be over your shoulder. I'm going to be over your shoulder. I'm fighting this. And you need to know that I'm going to be a thorn in your side. If you decide to do this, I think it's wrong.
How are we going to
find out? You got to make your voice heard.
You do. You absolutely do. But preschool special needs, I mean, this is the lowest of the low. And I got to tell you, if you can't stand against this, you don't belong in office. And so, again, here's where we're left, guys. We're left with Catherine Truitt saying, don't worry about it. We're in charge of the work product. But if you don't even know that this is critical race theory, how the hell can we trust you?
We're in charge of the work product?
Right.
No, I'm sorry. That's not how it works. When you sign a contract with a vendor and you give them money, on that contract, it says that they create the product.
Right.
They create the product and they own the product. Okay. They own the rights to the product such that if parents want to look at that, they try to make you go do a FOIA request because it's proprietary information.
It's not on the website anymore. It's not.
Now you're going to have to fight. Now that they've signed the contract, they're pulling it back and they're going to make you go jump through hoops to take a look at what they're teaching your children. They own the product. That is just a straight up lie. And that tells me the person signing contracts doesn't know how to read a contract, or again, she's lying.
Yeah, we have a lot of problems, but again, legislators staying out of this is not an option. So guys, I want you to talk to your favorite politician, maybe somebody you know running for office, whatever. You ask them what they're going to do to stop this. Now, we've had a lot of folks that are running for particular offices, whatever, and to their credit, they do want to be educated about this, Deb, and they've asked for, we had several people who have asked for the primary documentation on this, and they have called Tim Moore today to see if he can intervene. If you don't know who that is, he is head of the House, right? And so, but find your, talk to us. We've got the articles on our blog. You have to really get educated about this and send this to your favorite politician because they need to know. I mean, this is people power that's going to change this. For sure. But it's also educating the willing.
We need to host our own private, like they do it for their politicians all the time. We need to host our own private, like Zoom for politicians. I don't care what party you're in. If you want to learn about this stuff, about the word salad that goes along with it, so you don't get hoodwinked into thinking, it's culture responsive. That sounds good. And you're like, it's the same thing. So we need to teach them straight up. We need to teach them if they're willing. I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah. I mean, we should get that. I mean, we're an education and information company, and that's what we do. We, educate the masses and put, that material in your hands. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to have a lot more of this and get you guys involved. So with that said, Deb, thank you for tonight. I mean, this is, I
wish we had better news, but it's just something that you gotta stay on top of. Every time you think you're making progress, then they go, and now for preschool.
Exactly. And so, and I want to point out, and I want to really toot our horn, all of us, you and me and just a few others here in North Carolina, we are the only ones talking about this and getting it out. There are several organizations who claim to care about this stuff. They get millions of dollars in operations per year. They're not saying anything. They're keeping their lips zipped. And I would imagine it's because, somebody wearing their jersey is in office and they don't want to make them look bad. This is not about that. So I want to really thank you for putting it all out there and being one of the few that care about getting the truth out.
Yeah, there is truth. Truth can be known. Like I said, remember, next time they tell you it's just, it's not in there or whatever, that it's a theory they're teaching as fact, and they're making it like it is the truth, and there is no the truth. And then they'll turn around and tell you that it's their truth. No, truth can be known. And it is absolutely objectively true that the United States of America is not an inherently white supremacist nation. That is not my opinion. That can be known. Look at statutes, look at the Constitution, look at all the different laws that we've passed in our over 250-year history. What we have demonstrated is we are absolutely progressively more and more and more anti-racist long before Kendi was even born.
Well, let me tell you about anti-racism. We are the only country in the history of the world that has been willing to go to war for itself, with itself, so that all men could be free. So that's the truth. That's anti-racism. So we've done it. Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, this kind of stuff is exactly the kind of othering that led to the Zimbabwe massacres. Between the Hutsi and the Tutus. Okay. Yeah. It was exactly this kind of rhetoric, referring to people as insects and cockroaches and things like that. When you other people, you get very bad things. And that's what they're doing.
Well, it's a tinderbox, and they're making our most sacred spaces a war zone, and we're not going to let it. We are not, as long as we're here breathing, we're not going to let it happen. I can tell you that right now. This right here, what they did today. We are just we're just beginning to begin. So,
Well, we'll keep on it.
yeah. Oh,
We'll keep
absolutely.
on it.
Thank you, Deb, very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you for explaining this in such great detail, because it's so much, right? It's so much that we have to know, and the different dimensions of everything. And
Yeah, people just need to understand. It's like they make it seem like, oh, it's too complicated and you don't understand what you're talking about. Like, no, it's not complicated at all. It's a theory of race in America. And if you agree with it, then you agree that America is inherently racist, that white people are all racist because it's part of being white, and that, the only way to make America a not racist country is to clamp down on decenter, punish, treat differently white people. That's it in a nutshell. And that's just the critical race theory piece of it. Then you have gender, then you have this and that and the other. So critical theory is about deconstructing everything that was down to the ground so you can put it back together, allegedly, into some utopian thing. Then, it's like a neo-Marxist kind of a thing where instead of class, it's race. So before it was upper class, bourgeoisie, working class, and now it's black and white.
yeah,
They're just
totally
using race.
preposterous. It's been preposterous, but this is downright evil. This is downright evil. We're going to fight back on this, and we're going to keep you posted on that. So, thank you guys, and you need to share this broadcast. I want you to hit Deb up. Deb, can you drop into the chat box your blog? Yeah.
So but that's, well, I'm not just the reason we learn is the channel.
This
is
is
the
on
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube. And then I have the reasonwelearn.locals.com.
Check it out.
And-
You do not, I mean, again, there's only a few of us that are telling the unvarnished truth.
And you guys, you can subscribe also to edwatchdaily.com. I blog there with a group of other people. That is a blog run by C. Bradley Thompson out of Clemson. And there's several other professors and other people. And we watch education daily. So you can go there. It's kind of modeled on like Instapundit style. So just headlines, little blurb, headlines, little blurb. So, but if you're interested in education news, you can go see stuff. I take Sloan's stuff and put it there, so you be sure not to miss it, because I don't want you to miss her stuff on her blog.
Yeah.
So.
Don't miss mine.
All right, no, guys. I just take it and I put it there so they won't miss it.
Thank you. Yeah. Y'all, I mean, you have to read. You have to read. There's only so many of us that are going to be telling the truth. So it's me and you.
And guys, go to YouTube. Also, go to New Discourses and watch Groomer School. There's 3 videos. Every parent in America needs to watch these 3 videos. Groomer School 1, 2, and 3. Take the time. It's well worth it. You will understand everything. It will all be clear why this is happening, what the end game is, and the language, the vocabulary.
Yeah, you won't sleep for nights after.
Well, don't scare them. I want them to watch it, but put it this way. It's scary, but you'll feel empowered. You won't be the kind of scared you are now where it seems so foreign and like, how do I even wrap my brain around it? You'll still be scared, but now you'll feel like, okay, I know what I'm looking at and I know what I'm looking for, and you'll be able to make intelligent arguments against it.
Oh, you definitely will. That's for sure. Forewarned is forearmed.
Exactly.
So, all right, guys, have a wonderful night. We'll see you next week.